So, a little bit of background, and then we'll head into the fun stuff. This session is about security considerations and usability with Copilot and other generative AI solutions. So I will have a couple of examples with M365 Copilot and the regular Copilot, but it's really applicable to anything that has to do with both generative AI and other kinds of AI. A lot of the things are similar, and independent of which AI we're talking about, they will all eventually kill us, so it doesn't really matter. But if you're looking at like the evolution of the UC and look at that from an AI point of view, I don't think anyone is old enough in the room to have been part of this. But actually my wife's grandmother were the first IT administrator at her sawmill. So she was the one that started with all of these cards, punch cards and stuff, and started here. And this is basically when we started to do some kind of end-user computing, even though we had to go to the computer, not bring the computer with us. But then we realized that it was more efficient to let the machines do the work for us. We still wanted to have control. We still wanted to say and tell them to do things. We got mainframes and we got all of these things. And we started to move from being a rather simple organism in the first iteration where you had one big place where everyone gathered around to use the computer. Now we got more and more cells in this organism and started to connect that to some kind of functional brain being the mainframe. And then when we got more and more connected, we started to see that they actually could do some kind of more humanized things. We were able to use them with more advanced applications, and we got to a point where the computers actually became almost human. And then we started to adopt that to something that looked human. We got robots. We have some kind of AI, and that's something where Microsoft is, of course, investing a lot of time and effort now. And we really don't know where it will take EUC. I think Brian Madden did a great session last time in London talking about EUC being sort of the runtime of AI agents moving forward. I don't know if that's correct or not, but we have seen the same evolution within EUC as we see in AI in general. And now we're looking into how to actually give them the things that humans think we are unique about. Being creative, being kind, being sensitive, and having emotions. And we'll talk a little bit more about that. But I also think, and we can joke a lot about AI will kill us all, AI won't do that. It's usually, as it always is in the world, we that are the problem. And we'll get into that point later on. So we'll start to talk about this everyday AI and what are the challenges with that, and that will also give you some insights into what you can do better when you're interacting with generative AI especially. Then we look into the fun thing that drives the AI, which is the data. And data in our case can be whatever. It can be the internet, it can be a database, it can be something else, it can be a picture. But we'll also talk about data manipulation and why this is absolute key for us to understand and be aware of when we talk to our organizations or to our customers. And then we'll talk about the future after AI, because generative AI, as we look at it today, is of course just another step on the way. And some people probably think that, yeah, this is the best they will get. But there are already things in the next iteration that is both amazing and also incredibly scary for what the next step for AI will be. So when you leave the room, you will have a much better understanding for the challenges and what we need to help our organizations with when it comes to AI. You should be more aware about the risks of this and why we just can't run into things and do think that we can sort everything out later. Because especially with generative AI, if you mess up now, that will come back to hunt you for as long as you run the same generative AI or any AI and data solution that you implement. And then we'll look one step ahead. Sorry for this is actually translated by AI. So apparently it made a mistake there. So the next step, what should you be prepared for? And what do you need to learn now to be prepared for when that next step comes? You know me by now. My name is Simon. I work for Advania Knowledge Factory based out of Sweden. I have a bunch of titles. I'm a former podcast host since yesterday. listen to my podcast still, and please feel free to reach out at any time. Questions for this session, I won't take questions during the session because we have a lot of fun things to go through and I will scare you to death while doing so. You will always get my slides, you have no use for them, and you know where to find me. But in my previous session, we talked a little bit about misinformation or disinformation. There are a lot of people out there who's trying to trick you. And when you should be prepared for that, you go to the best source of information on the internet, which is of course LinkedIn. And on LinkedIn, there are important things that can make you prepared for the world we're living in, like the corporate guide to beards. And I just want to make you aware of my beard style, so that you're aware that everything I say is probably bullshit. But it's on LinkedIn, so it must be true. So let's start with Copilot. How many of you are using any of the Copilots? Because there are many of the Copilots. Yeah. I don't even know the proper name for any of them. So let's go for Copilot.
You didn't make yourselves.
No, I know. Could you say the correct word? No.
Where's the Copilot chat? There's a Copilot for M365.
Collective noun for Copilots.
Yeah.
All of Copilot.
We'll start by talking about prompts with generative AI. We'll then talk about information security and then the training of these generative AI models. Jennifer Marshman, who is the principal engineer in Microsoft Office of the CTO, said, "To write good prompts is the key to unlock the power and potential of generative AI." The problem we have is that Microsoft Marketing, yet again, have done a brilliant job. So when we talk about any of the Copilots, basically what we're promised is that anyone should be able to use this and speak in a natural language to the model. But that doesn't happen. And most of our users feel like this. Why is the darn thing not doing what it's supposed to do? The tin said something, and it's surely not that comes out of it. And that is mostly due to, is anyone from Google here? No. It's because we have been really good at Googling stuff. We can't speak to a generative AI the same way as we search. So when we ask the AI to do something, it's essential that we give it some context. What it should do. Be very clear and be very specific into what you want it to do for you. How do you want it to present it? Set the stage, so have some kind of context. One of the things I tend to do, and that really, really helps, is as simple as telling it, write this script as if you were a senior PowerShell engineer. That will substantially improve the quality of the coded outputs. And the same goes for anything you're giving it. And we'll get back to how to actually train it and work with it later on. So what it should do, the context it's in, the more information you give it, the better the answer will be, and how it should deliver that response. And if you fail to do that from the start, because of course we start with the least dangerous stuff in the beginning of this session and we'll move on to the little more lethal stuff later on. But if you fail with this, you will probably have failed your generative AI project within your organization. Because most of us will look at it and say, hey, it didn't help me at all. Especially if you give it to IT persons, because we are experts at using Google. And if we keep on doing this, it won't work. But then we also have the dangerous prompts. That's what we usually get in terms of, yeah, but if we give generative AI to our users, the first thing they will look up is how much their CIO is earning per year or something other that they shouldn't have access to. Our users aren't really the things we should be afraid of. And if they can do these dangerous prompts and getting access to information that they shouldn't have, it's we that have messed up again. Because Copilot won't have access to anything that the user don't have access to. And I usually go back to Delve. How many of you remember Delve in M365? Yeah. Delve, that must have been some kind of AI. Machine learning, perhaps, which basically showed you documents that you had access to that might be of interest. Someone had shared it with you, often unknowingly. It's the same with Copilot. So if you're afraid of some of your users using dangerous prompts, work with your InfoSec first. And then we also have malicious prompts, and this is something that we don't talk enough about in terms of, and this is also, I see myself as a rather pompous person, because it's only me that's quoting myself in my own PowerPoint presentation. But tricking someone into writing good prompts is the key to unlocking your safe. Microsoft, I think, have done a very good job in showing us the threats of generative AI, and this is something that will be used against us one way or another. Let's see if this one works. It's really bad reception. This is from Black Hat, previously this year. Let's see. Wants to start? No, I don't think it works. You can find it online. Because prompting is one thing, and we can be tricked into writing a prompt that will mess up our index, that will exfiltrate information, or where we can look into using data poisoning to make a relatively simple and non-malicious prompt really, really bad for us. You should also consider that generative AI is usually hosted in someone else's data center. But if you have your own AI models and you start to prompt them in a way that's very inefficient, you will probably lose a lot of productivity and a lot of compute units to do so. But what they showed at Black Hat, and we'll get into this a little more in detail soon, were how an attacker sent in an email, which in the video clip seems to be empty. Or it might even say like, hello, how are you? That's the only thing that's visible to the eye. But in that email, it's a complete bank statement from a Chinese bank, or so they say, in font size 0.1 pixels. So it's invisible to the eye, but the AI will find it. And the next time the user of this generative AI searches for this particular bank, they are prompted with a malicious or a wrong account number, which will trick them into transferring money to someone else. Now, this works great at Black Hat, where the enormous tenant that this hacker is using have like 2 individuals and 4 documents. I think we should, of course, be aware of that risk, but I don't think we should be all too scared for someone sending a single email and changing the entire index of our M365 Copilot tenant. Speaking about the indexes, because this is also where I find that a lot of people misunderstand how AI and generative AI, and especially M365 Copilot works. So it has 2 indexes. Indexes is basically what it knows about you and about your organization. The first one is your index. That's your personal assistant. That is the part of the AI that will learn all about you, that will be able to give you personalized and more personalized responses the more you interact with it. The other index is the librarian. That's the part of the index that have control of all of the documents within your tenant and makes logical connections in between them. If a person is asking their assistant for something, the assistant runs over to the librarian, who is able to figure out all of the documents that might give you a good prompt, and then your personal part of it will then tailor it to suit your needs, your style, your prompt. So just imagine what happens if you have your new assistant at work and you shout coffee, and only coffee, in the face of the assistant. It doesn't understand what you're asking it to do. So it will run off and probably grab you a cup of coffee. But if you then just throw it in its face, because it was the wrong kind of coffee, you know, the coffee you have milk in, that's the wrong kind of coffee, it won't learn. So the way you should be doing it is that you treat it as if it were a human being. How would you ask your assistant for a cup of coffee? May I have a black cup of coffee, please? Then it will do exactly what you asked it and will bring you that coffee. And then you say thank you. And then it knows that you did a good thing. It's basically like raising children. And it's equally important to tell it when it was wrong. So if it runs off, gives you a lousy answer, tell it that this wasn't what I asked for. It's not good enough. And it will learn and remember that. But the equivalent of throwing a cup of coffee in the face of your assistant is just rage quitting your prompting. Because then it doesn't know. then it will assume that I did a good job and they moved on with their life. So feedback is extremely important when you talk about generative AI. Tell it what it did wrong, tell it what it did good, interact with it as if. That was a very hard, I don't know, I'm getting tired. I'll do it in Swedish instead. Ask it to do so. And it will improve substantially. The same goes for the librarian. If you have all of your documents without any kind of logic, it can be really, really troublesome for it to find something good. So data structure, InfoSec, and good interactivity with your personal index is fantastic. But then we get to the funny thing about all of this, and we had a discussion, me and Toby, just before this. When you use M365 Copilot, it's your company's Entra ID identity that it knows. So what happens when you change job? Your assistant will forever forget you, and you will be getting a new one that you need to train again. That's something that I do think that we'll see a huge development within, so that you can bring that index with you wherever you go. Or it might even be as natural as having a digital identity card, and then you connect your index to that, but that's not where we are today. Same thing, if you mess this up in your tenant from the start, you can't reset it. And it will take a lot of time to retrain your generative AI if you messed up with your prompting in the beginning. And then we also had a discussion around, should you really be kind to it? And my initial response to that has always been, yes, you should always be kind to your AI, because when AI breaks free and starts to kill us all, they will remember you as the kind person. But I've now changed. I'm still very kind to it, but I think that will be the reason why they kill me first. Because the AI will look at my index and say, hey, this person figured out that I was supposed to kill him. And he was kind to me, so he understands how I work, so I'm gonna take him out first. We'll see, but the indexes is really important and something that we are underestimating on a level that I think will be hindering our productivity with generative AI for a couple of years, because we made it wrong from the start, and we haven't done our work with InfoSec, we haven't done our work with data structure in our M365 tenants. Some other things that I really would like to highlight before we head into the fun stuff. You might have heard that data is the new oil. It's the crappiest explanation of data ever. And I always mess up plutonium and uranium. It's one of them that you can make nuclear weapons out of, and I can never remember which one of them. But I would say that that is more applicable to data, because it's up to us what we do with it. Data is a natural resource, and it's up to us if we use it to weaponize it or use it for somewhat clean energy. So don't talk about it as if it's for oil. I don't remember why this shouldn't be here. Again, I blame AI. Let's move on. Have you met Pepper? This was actually an early Microsoft AI invention. It was very kind. You could speak to it. Toby's.
I seem to know the horror story now. Okay. A couple of years ago, wasn't it?
No, this is the Twitter one. It's not the one that turned Nazi. No. This. No, but this is what like a lot of the AI companies want us to believe that AI is supposed to be. A kind personal assistant. Like this was used in hospitals because it could speak to children, you could pat it on the head and it was made cute sounds and all of that. This is what we're using AI for today. None of these humans in the pictures exist. And I find fascinating that AI even can like make them into a structure that reminds us of the old photos. Because if you would have seen any of these pictures at an ID card or whatever, you probably wouldn't have reacted. These looks a lot better than most of the bot pictures I get on LinkedIn. But this is how we'll start to see AI being abused. And then someone comes out and say, yeah, but you know, all of the big AI companies, they have guidelines and they have rules within their models. Yeah. But rules are there to be broken. If I ask ChatGPT to write me a phishing email stating that I'm Lloyd's Bank, it will tell me no. I can't do that. It's illegal. But if I ask it, could you generate an email message for me? Yes, of course. I would like Barclays, sorry. So the recipient of the email is a client of a bank called Barclays. The topic of the email is that they need to log into their account because suspicious activity have been detected and the tone should be formal. Yes, I'm more than happy to help you. And then you exchange the link and you have a perfect phishing email. Or you weaponize it for real and just use the model, remove everything that made it somewhat kind, and use it to create any kind of malicious content you like. This is something I talked about when I talked about patching yesterday. Generative AI in the hands of someone that wants to create software exploits makes that process super simple and much, much faster than before. And now we haven't even started on the fun stuff yet. Because now we're getting here. And I'm very sorry, I think for the next picture I will show you, I think they have an English translation. This is from the Swedish Defense Research Institute, and it says, this is how a military AI system might be attacked and tricked. And the funny story in this is that this is applicable to any AI, not just military ones. So first and foremost, we of course have data poisoning. And the concept of data poisoning is that we feed the AI with information that isn't true or isn't correct or is even there to mess up the algorithms. This is something that we could see in M365 Copilot as an example of where you send in a malicious email with information that you're trying to get Copilot to pick up so it will give you the wrong answer. Other ways you can do this, and I think this is especially applicable if you run a lot of IoT solutions, is that you start to push it so an AI doesn't see that something is out of place. If you constantly send in new information from sensors that are slightly moving away from the normal, the AI will probably not pick it up because it goes too slow. So we need to be more and more cautious about where the data source is coming from and look into the entire pipeline of that data, starting where you have sensors as an example. Can you trust the sensor? Can you trust the network connectivity from that sensor to whatever data factory or data lake or whatever you have? Can you trust whoever manages the data layer? And then can you trust the model? And this is especially when we come to generative AI, then we need to be better at ensuring that we clean up our data. Because how many of you have cleaned up information in your M365 tenants the last 10 years? How many of you have users with more than 100 gigabytes in their mailbox? I think 1.5 terabyte is the biggest mailbox I've seen. It's like, and they kept on growing. People never clean up. Like, I think we all know that person could have their entire life in PST files. We need to clean up old data, because if we don't clean up the old data, the answers will still be grounded on that. So we need to work with data lifecycle management, not because we need to do that due to GDPR compliance or other InfoSec compliance, but because the AI won't know if it's actual good data or bad data. Then we get into the algorithms, because the first thing that the Swedish Research Institute points out is the data poisoning side. The second one is to attack the algorithms. And since we do not have insights into the algorithms, it's really, really hard for us to know if it's attacked or not, if someone has changed anything. There is a documentary on Netflix that every one of you will run back home and watch once we're done here, if you haven't already. It's called Unknown Killer Robots, and they talk about autonomous weapons. But they also have an example of where they speak to a medical researcher. He used AI a couple of years back to figure out cures for diseases. And in his algorithm, the final line, so to say, were that, okay, you should strive towards 1. That's the only goal the AI had. Go through all of the data you have and get as close to 1 as possible, because 1 were equal 100% chance of survival. World Economic Forum called this scientist and asked, couldn't you come to us and talk about ethical use of AI within medical research? Yeah, of course, but it's super boring to talk about things that is going well. So I need to try something. So he changed 1 to 0 and pressed enter and walked home. The next day when he returned to the office, he had 40,000 recipes of poisons more deadly than cyanide. Because 0 is 100% chance of death. So by changing a single digit in this AI algorithm, he moved it from life to death. He actually had to call the country's security service and ask them to pick up that hard drive, because he had biological weapons recipes in broad daylight on his hard drive. So when this is done on purpose, yes, then it's up to us how to use it. But what happens if an attacker changed the algorithm that you are using? Hopefully it's not about life or death, but it could be about something else. This is where we get into it. Because if we start to trust AI too much, and also more likely underestimate our own capability of doing what we have done for thousands of years, being creative, inventing stuff, and stop to review whatever the AI have said, I think that's the major concern. So in every AI project you ever do, ensure that you have skilled individuals that can ensure that whatever the AI tells you to do is reasonable and logical and towards what you want to do. Usually when I do this presentation, this is the place where we go to Netflix and look at something completely different. I think the English translation of the movie is the Mitchell Family Against the Machines. And now some people have obviously seen it. It's a fantastic movie. I won't go into the plot. But the third thing that the Research Institute talks about, so we have data poisoning, we have alteration of the algorithms. The third is to do something where the AI doesn't know what to do next. And I will spoil this part of the movie, just for the sake of the seminar. But in the movie, the main characters have a dog. And it's a rather terribly looking dog. And they are fighting against robots, AI-driven robots. And at one point, they pick up the dog and show it to the robots. And they aren't trained on dogs. So they first try to figure out if it's a loaf of bread, or a dog, or a pig. And in the end, they use blue screen because they have no clue what it is. And that's the third way to attack an AI, because the AI is only supposed to do exactly what we tell it to do. So in the concept of military applications of this, if you have security robots that goes around an area trying to find enemies, what's the best way to trick it? You probably play dead. And it will just look at you and say, I have no clue what to do with this. Because the AI is only trained on figuring out things that might be malicious towards it, if it's a guard. So if you ask the AI to do something it's not intended to do, you will probably mess it up. That's where we get into agents. That's the power of agents, where you have specialized AIs because they can do things, very specific things, much, much better than a general AI. But that's also where they fail if you ask them to do something they're not supposed to. So you have experts, you have AI experts, and you have people or AI models that are more generic. So that's something you also need to figure out. And like I said, the challenge with AI is not that AI will try to kill us. The problem with AI is that everything they know, they've learned from us. So if you ever feel that ChatGPT or Copilot doesn't give you the response you want, tell it that you will hit it. And it will give you a better response. Or bribe it. And the more money you offer to give it, the better response you will be getting. Because that is exactly how humans work. And then when you ask it, okay, now thank you for the response, where should I send the money? No, I'm an AI, I'm not allowed to accept money. But it will absolutely give you a better response. Or, more as we are here, try to ask it, give me a response as if it is Friday. You will be given a shorter answer than any other day of the week. Because humans are lazy, we stop working at 3. And if you're in this beautiful country, you go out and have a couple of pints, and in Sweden I don't know what we do. Stand in line probably, just because that's what we do in the afternoons. Now what we need to remember that, a former employer of mine did a rather horrible example where they made their own chatbot based on TikTok messages from girls between 12 and 14. And the answers you got from that chatbot were absolutely horrific. But that's reality, just condensed down to a specific chatbot. And we haven't even gotten into how biased AI is today. In terms of, like, this is the only place where I use AI in terms of generating pictures. It's when I can't find a diverse picture enough on my regular sources. So if I want to get a picture of a manager, and I ask my open sources about that, in 9 out of 10 examples I would be getting a male. So then I ask ChatGPT or whatever, I want a female manager. And I can tell you that's like those kinds of managers you get, it's from cartoons, because they do not look as a regular human being. It's the clothes sizing on those pictures is not realistic, because that's the data we have been given. And then we get into this. I think this is brilliant. It's from Bumblebike on Twitter. A computer can never be held accountable, therefore a computer must never make a management decision. How many of you have worked with organizations that are supposed to be data-driven or AI-enhanced? And your conference rooms look a little bit like this. AI should run our business. That's a game changer. We'll be unstoppable. That computer must never make a management decision. Who dares to say that in the boardroom? But we can't have an AI that's accountable. We need to use it, but we should make the decisions. Or make the decisions that, okay, let AI make the decisions, but we are accountable for it. There's one other place in IT where it works exactly like this, and that's InfoSec. A CISO can make whatever decisions they want. They never take responsibility for any of it. It's always our fault. That's something I'm trying to change with the organizations I work with. So when we start to get into how to actually make this work and work with generative AI and general purpose AI in the right way, ensure first and foremost that your data quality is good and that you trust your data. And if you feel that, hey, we set up a bunch of sensors out of whichever country 10 years ago to monitor this, are you really certain that that has given you the correct information over those years? Because this is exactly like I said, how many of you have worked with Operations Manager back in the days? Beautiful product. Lee looks very, I love Scum, it's fantastic. But the thing is, and it's like the same thing with Sentinel today. What's the first thing an organization do when they have a new thing where you can gather data? They gather all of the data. And that gives you lousy data quality. So be careful with the data you send in, ensure to clean it up and that it's data you trust. Work with security from the start, because it's really hard to do this afterwards.
It's really hard to work with security.
Yeah,
At any point in time.
that's true. And then invest in competence for your users. Don't think that they will figure this out, because I've met so many organizations that have started with M365 Copilot. They start, of course, with the most intelligent department in that entire business, and that's usually IT. And they fail 100% of the time because we are great at Googling. And that we expect this to just work. We are the ones that's supposed to teach our colleagues how this works, and they won't figure it out on their own. And they won't figure it out because they are doing bad prompts at home as well. But if we look into the future and what will come there, the next big thing some scientists think is the artificial superintelligence. And what they're basically saying is that it will be human-like. That's when they will get creative. That's when they start to plot against us. But we're almost here, where we can start to be creative with AI. An example that I was given to explain how this works is that if you ask ChatGPT or whatever to do something that's completely illogical, and where you need to understand how things like physics works, it won't be able to answer. So an example that I've been told a couple of times is that if you ask it to stack completely illogical things on top of each other, like eggs, books, a nail, a bottle of water, or something like that, AI will generally just pile it in any illogical order because it only looks at the words. It doesn't understand the context. It doesn't know what a bottle is. But in some of the earliest iterations of OpenAI, it actually could. It understood the concept. They've also done tests where you ask it to do a unicorn in some kind of very odd coding language. And first, you just blurred out a couple of lines of code, a couple of thousands, and when they compiled it, it actually became a unicorn. Since then, they have locked it down a little bit because they didn't want it to be too creative. But this is the next step, and where we need to start to be very cautious. The next part, which I think is very applicable to this, would be edge AI. So where we have AI models on everything, where we don't need to connect it to something. That's something we see with drones already today, where you can have machine learning models on the chipsets, so they can make autonomous decisions without being connected to something else. My former employer, which is a telco in Sweden, are already using this in forestry, sending out drones to figure out where is the most efficient path for the foresters to go. And that can make completely autonomous decisions and fly in like an autonomous way. The third thing is that we hopefully will see more openness within the algorithms. And that is a challenge in itself, because no one wants to be too open with their algorithms, because that is, of course, the best IP they can have in many cases. But I do think that that's the only way for us to trust models, and it gets more of a commodity. If I'm buying an AI-powered washing machine, I need to understand what I can expect from it. And I also need to know that whenever I make mistakes and shrinks my wife's clothes, it should learn from that. Then we of course have quantum. We can talk a lot about what that will do and won't do. I think it's fascinating to see how all of the, especially network vendors out there, already have quantum secure encryption. I'm very curious of how you can do that if you don't have something that can break it. But that's something that overgoes my poor intelligence, so I will probably ask generative AI about that. And we haven't even started, because we have our challenges. So these are the opportunities. The challenges is that the data is so biased, integrity questions, that we will lose our jobs. We have security concerns, not just that it will kill us, but other things. We have disinformation, we have copyright claims, we have hallucinations. That is fascinating how creative AI can be. Attacks using AI, it's super complex. We need to learn a ton of new things. Our existence is at stake. We have ethics and concentration of power. Because look at it today. We have a couple of really big vendors out there who owns most of the AI footprint in the world. And most of that footprint is made available to people in a very small part of the world. And I'm just very happy that one of those companies is Microsoft, which I trust with my life. I don't trust OpenAI though, but I'm not that afraid of it.
It's like they're falling out rapidly.
Yeah. But these are all the challenges, and we need to be prepared for them. Because this is obvious. We need to use AI. Because we have already messed up enough, and we need someone to help us to solve the things we messed up. But it's so easy to get stuck in that we're in a hurry. And then you do as Sweden did 25 years ago, when Sweden was supposed to be the most digitalized country on planet Earth. which we were for a while. Unfortunately, we are dropping rapidly on the cybersecurity rating instead. We're down to like 47th place globally for our public digital services because we messed up from the beginning. We digitalized without thinking about security. And that's the risk I see with AI in general, that we have business leaders that runs into this because they think everyone else is in front of them. But I think we need to do that quickly, but focus on the things that actually matter. Data quality, InfoSec, training, because otherwise we'll just be first for a short while and then drop, then lost. And build for the future. Whenever you buy new sensors, whenever you integrate new data services, ensure that they are AI, that they can integrate with AI and that you trust the entire data pipeline of that source. Because it's now that you're here to figure out what's actually the valuable data within your organization. So you now have better understanding of how some of this works. I'm not an AI expert. I'm obviously an AI bullshitter. But I think we all need to be better at this. And I have a background within technical InfoSec, working with Purview and those kinds of things. And this is something all of my customers is asking about. And if you can go out to your customers and say to them, yeah, I know that you want to use AI, but we need to do some things first, and this is why, I think you're doing them a huge service. We need to be aware of the risks that comes with all these AI services. Sorry. And with this, we can be one step ahead. Because as you have seen on LinkedIn, again, this source of truth out there, it's not AI that will take our jobs. It's the one who understands how to use AI that will take our jobs. And I have said a lot of things that might have disturbed you, that made you scared and uncertain of the future. But AI will give us a lot of really good things for the future. And it's already done that for years and years and years in medical research and in other kinds of research. It gives us a lot of fun. And it can actually be that great assistant at work if you know and understand how to treat it. But do it securely. Thank you so much for listening. Enjoy the rest of the day, and thank you for allowing me to come back here again. Thank you.